My name's Gary Candlebinder. I want to welcome you here today. We're celebrating Veterans Day, and I'm honored that I get to even speak to you. Veterans Day began with the armistice at World War I. It's the day that peace began. It was the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month that this began. And it represented what we hoped was the end of all wars. 65 million troops had fought on all sides in World War I. It really is amazing when you think of all the veterans and the things that they have done. Since that time, we've had World War II, the Korean conflict, Vietnam, Afghanistan. I mean, we have been all over the Middle East in conflict, and every time veterans have always stepped up to the plate to set a moral standard of what was worthy, what was true, what was honorable. I was in the Arkansas Air National Guard from 1971 through 1977.
Carl Smith, I served in the U.S. Coast Guard for 4 years.
My name is Larry Merkling. I served in the Army in 69 and 70.
I'm Vilma Holly. I served with the United States Coast Guard as a petty officer.
Ward Hawley, U.S. Army Staff Sergeant.
I'm Danny Whitfield. I served in the Navy's Civil Engineer Corps.
My name is Chris Pierce. My rank is Sergeant First Class, and I've served in the Army National Guard all 15 years.
My name is Troy Jennings. I was in the Air Force in 1961 to 1964.
Herb Bogley, I served in the Army.
Hi, my name is Bob Wyatt. I served in the U.S. Army, and then I switched over to the Navy and retired in 1991.
My name is Michael Nicolosi. I spent 7 years in the United States Coast Guard.
And I'm his wife, Clara, and I spent 22 years in the Coast Guard. I joined in 1981 and retired after 22 years of active duty service.
My name's Bob Svoboda. I served with the United States Marine Corps, 3rd Marine Division, Fleet Marine Force out of Okinawa.
Hi, my name is Sergeant First Class Chris Howard. I'm currently deployed with the 39th Infantry 1st Battalion out of Arkansas. It's at Camp Lemonnier, Djibouti, Africa.
My name is Tyler Smith. I served in the U.S. Army.
My name is Rick Skaggs, and I served in the Army. I was there from 79 to 80.
I'm Sergeant First Class John Bradshaw. I've had the honor of serving in our Arkansas Army National Guard since 2002.
My name is Glenn W. Elliott, ET-1, U.S. Navy.
I can tell you I grew up in the military. I was 17 when I entered basic training. I turned 18 at basic training.
My first experience in Vietnam, of course with every troop, is landing in country. The further north you traveled and the mode of travel was a C-130. The web seating and rattle, noise, bang, beat, they said strap in. And I thought, no, I'm gonna just stay loose in case I gotta jump from this thing. Just the color of the earth, it was a rusty, dusty red color. There were troops coming in from maneuvers from the night before, and they were the same color as what the ground was. Their clothes were covered in that red dust. And I was thinking to myself, this is going to be home for 13 months, so.
And my rank was an E4 and served there 3.5 years in Hickam Air Force Base, Hawaii. Well, on our, naturally on our weekends, we'd go to the beach down in Waikiki. And the experience, one of the neat experiences I had, we climbed Diamond Head. And all we had on was our bathing suits and our little thongs, and that was pretty rough for climbing. And it was just a lovely time, it really was.
My very first day, they give me this little whisk broom about this long, and they sent 2 other younglings, new people in the Coast Guard, with me out down the breakwater to clean out all the cobwebs and spiders out of the lighthouse, out of the St. Joseph Pier Lighthouse. Why go do it? Hours. I'm swinging away. I was given a job, we're gonna get this job done, and lunch has come and gone, and no one even knows where I'm at, and now they're sending people to look for me. They're like, well, where did she go? Finally, about 2 hours after lunch, someone comes and finds me, and they're going, where have you been? I'm like, well, you sent me out to the lighthouse to clean out the cobwebs. They thought they were scaring me, and there were no cobwebs left in the lighthouse when I was done.
That is why I married her. I'm petrified of spiders.
Yes.
I lived in Europe for several years, saw most of Europe, and then I made my way west and traveled all over the world, mostly in the Orient, Australia. Saw all the world. It's probably the best education I ever had, more than I ever got in college.
I've got in the exact same day with my very best friend, John Bradshaw. And out of the 15 years, our paths have crossed some and some they haven't. But for the most part, we have served side by side in a lot of capacities. We thought we got in to go to college and to experience a part-time job in the National Guard, and we wound up being deployed. Operation Iraqi Freedom started. Well, him and I were side by side. When we got the call, he called me and said, "Did you just get a call to go to war?" I did too. That isn't exactly what we signed up for, but God obviously had other plans. From that point on, we did a 6-month train up, and him and I, side by side, we dug the same holes, we slept in the same bed next to each other, and being that we grew up together, we were already so close. So we experienced it with 28 other guys. We had a 30-man platoon. When we went over the border, and I'll never forget the very first time we were ever shot at, we were at a fueling site, and John was 2 trucks up from me, and the very first boom that went off, I looked at him and he looked at me and he said, "Wow, this is it, we're here. We're in another country." You know, we went through an 18-month deployment, but we were there together through thick and thin. After that deployment, we were complete and we come home, and you know, John had a great opportunity to go full-time, and he was able to go to recruiting and start helping the Arkansas National Guard in that capacity.
I've had the honor of serving in our Arkansas Army National Guard since 2002. I was a senior in high school when I joined. Joined for some college benefits, and soon thereafter I started to realize what serving was all about and started to ask more questions about what can I do for my country. Deployed to Iraq in 2004 and 2005. I had the honor of serving with my best friend Chris Pierce, who also goes to church here. When we got back from that deployment, I sought out opportunities to be full-time within the National Guard. I was able to come on to the full-time side of what we do with the Army National Guard as a recruiter.
Probably the most notable thing I did in the service was spent a year and a half on the fishery patrol up in Alaska, Aleutian Islands, just cruising around, chasing fishermen away from the islands.
I served with the United States Marine Corps, 3rd Marine Division, Fleet Marine Force out of Okinawa. I served 18 months in the Far East and Southeast Asia, and that's about all I have other than learning to speak Japanese very well.
I have served in 2 branches of the service, 45th Division, 279th Infantry Company C of the U.S. Army National Guard. Served 26 months. I went to the Navy and enlisted in the Navy. Was in the Navy for 46 months.
I'm currently deployed with the 39th Infantry 1st Battalion out of Arkansas to Camp Lemonnier, Djibouti, Africa. It's located in the Horn of Africa on the far east side of the continent. So what I do here is I'm over all the maintenance on the base. From weapons to trucks, tankers, generators, anything that our mechanics work on. In the evenings, I also serve as a fitness instructor, instructing members from all different branches, several different countries like France, Italy, Great Britain, Japan, and Germany.
My job was primarily to handle construction for the Navy and for other branches of the military. Most of that time I spent at Naval Air Station Corpus Christi, taking care of construction projects for the Navy on the airfield and various places in the base. Also for the Army, who has a manufacturing facility for all of their helicopters there in Corpus Christi. Did projects for various other government agencies as well, Coast Guard and a few others.
We both had unique jobs, with Michael in the radio communications, and then my specialty was bosun mate, and I actually drove boats. I mean, that was really the core of my specialty, but it also allowed me some leadership positions in the Coast Guard. So we were talking about some of our favorite memories.
One of the stories I want to share is we were in the Bering Sea, and we had a swim call, and so a bunch of us, jumped off this icebreaker and hit the water. They had shark watch up there because salt water. All of a sudden, I saw a gathering up there where the shark watch was. 50 calibers coming around, and all these automatic weapons are coming down, pointing to where I'm swimming, and it's freaking me out. And all of a sudden, I saw these dorsal fins coming. And they're huge dorsal fins coming at me. I see them waving off up there, and I'm going, I really bothered somebody, because they're not gonna shoot the sharks. They were hollering down on the speaker that it was beluga whales. There was a pod of beluga whales just surrounding us and swimming through us. And that was probably one of the most incredible experiences I've ever had. Just like literally reach out and touch these beluga whales. That's something I didn't forget.
I came from a military family. I spent 79 to 80 in the Army. Was a private going in and was a private going out. Basically, my entire family was military. I enjoyed the Army. I enjoyed my time in there. I actually was a heavy construction equipment mechanic. And by the grace of God, I served during peace times. I did not serve in any of the wars or conflicts.
As far as the military goes, I was able to go through a lot of educational schools that progressed my career. One of those schools was Ranger School. I lost 31 pounds. I was underweight when I graduated. And I tell you, I've been through 2 tours of combat, both in Iraq. I've done a lot of things in the military. I tell you, I was there for 3.5 months, and every single day I prayed to the Lord to get me through something I had to accomplish that day. Some mountain, some experience that I had to get a go on a scenario. And you start Ranger School and there's 500 of us, and we graduated less than 100. And the big thing there is, out of those 100, I didn't meet one person that wasn't a Christian at the end of that school. It was almost like combat.
We were an intelligence squadron. In other words, we took the bullets and guns off of fighters and replaced them with cameras. I don't feel at my era and with what I had to do anywhere near as significant as those that were there on the front lines. But those that are on the point of the spear, my gosh, what can we say except thank you?
The most memorable thing that happened was we were flying along in the desert from the medevac units, and we were going along talking to my guys. Saw a goat, a lone goat, mind you, and we stopped. I hoisted my medic down. I'm like, hey guys, we have to have Christmas dinner. And this was a perfect opportunity. So I hoisted my medic down, calling him out, how many feet he is, bring him back up, and we take this goat back to post. And me being the only redneck, I had to prepare the meal with the goat. And Christmas morning, we had goat for our Christmas meal, and it was amazing.
When I'm not out on missions, I live in what's called a CLU, a container living unit, which is exactly what it sounds like. The containers or connexes that you see on semis going down the highway, they turn those into living quarters for us, but they're pretty comfortable. And as you can imagine, we need the AC units in here. I've only experienced a few days that were under 100 degrees since I've been here, and only 4 days of rain. So it gets pretty hot over here.
I served aboard a gasoline tanker in North Korean waters. Tanker originally fueled PBY flying boats in World War II, but we were fueling baby carriers north of the 38th parallel, where they were flying F-4Us off of their decks. We carried 66,000 gallons of high-octane aviation gasoline. And I guess one of the most memorable things for me is it didn't go off, because we wouldn't have sank, we'd have gone up.
Our Coast Guard unit is in charge of patrolling the San Francisco Bay Area waters. We're the ones that respond to whatever happens in that waters.
A notable experience for me was when a friend of mine and I were given the mission of penetrating a Nike base in South Korea. That's Nike as in missile, and not tennis shoes. But we were subsequently found ourselves on the floor with M16s pointed at us. But it all turned out well. We briefed the major that they had done a great job, and we went on our merry way.
Being an MP, working in the stockade, after my company pretty much got wiped out, I had one guy I processed into the stockade, and I says, what happened to you? I remember you from my company. And I said, what'd you do to get in here? He says, oh, I shot my CO. And I said, you shot your CO? And you're not in Leavenworth? He says, yeah, I didn't kill him, but I sure ticked him off.
This picture was taken shortly before I retired, and as Linda likes to remind me, she's the only captain around this house.
The neat thing about my serving in Hawaii is my commanding officer lived in Memphis, or he's from Memphis, and every time he went home, he asked me if I'd like to fly home with him. And I got a free vacation, but that was really cool.
Well, God had just totally orchestrated our lives, and I ended up in Morgan City, Louisiana, the southern bayous of Louisiana. Michael ended up in
Grand Isle, Louisiana.
Well, and this was back when talking on the phone cost 17 cents a minute or 21 cents a minute. So our unit, Morgan City, would get on the radio and call into our group unit, which was Michael, the radio man. And I worked with a bunch of guys, and they didn't want to get on the radio. So every day I would call in and get the weather and get the normal traffic that was happening on a daily basis. And I was talking to this guy.
I heard her voice, it's true. I heard her voice come through the radio, and it literally stopped me in my tracks. I finished the communications, and I immediately went over to the supervisor and said, "Who is that?" You know, they came up with the identity, and I picked up the phone and called when I figured they'd gotten back to the station, and started a communication with her, hoping that I would one day meet her. I mean, it just absolutely blew me away. I'd never experienced anything emotionally like that.
Well, he finally got qualified. That was one of the things he had to do. And when he got qualified, he could leave the island. This is literally a 10-mile island, and he wasn't allowed to leave until he got certified. And when that happened, I said, "Hey, come to Morgan City, let's go bowling." So he drove over to Morgan City. And
when we met, he answered the door, and the first thing out of my mouth was, "I'm not here for a relationship." It's the very first thing I said, because I was petrified. I'd never experienced love, and it took me.
A year later, we were married, and this past September makes 34 years that we've been together. So.
Some of the most interesting things were when we would have visitors come through Corpus Christi, you know, like the Blue Angels and other people, and preparing for those events and making sure everything was in shape. And the base was an interesting place because it was built very quickly back during World War II. You never knew what you were going to find. You might be working on a road project and look down and see that you're standing on an old grenade. There was a lot of history there, and a lot of interesting things happened.
Yeah, the last duty station I served on was the United States Relief Lightship, guiding ships up through the harbors. The lightship is now a museum. It's in Jack London Square in Oakland, California.
A couple years later, I was deployed again. This time, I went at it alone. So I was a leader in this deployment, and again, I was a Christian at this point. My thoughts going in this thing was, as a leader, how many people can I affect? How many men can I bring to the Lord in a really extreme situation? A lot of times, you know, there's a saying, no atheist in a foxhole, and that is very, very true from my experience. Started a Bible study, and truth be it, it didn't go well. I think the devil was really going against my plans to what I thought would be an easy Bible study. So I had to actually dig in and find alternate ways, and it had to be an Army-based leadership with the Lord. We ended up getting it, and as a leader I was involved, and this entire experience just really got us a lot stronger.
One of the most memorable experiences that I had as being a Chief Petty Officer in the Navy was saving boat people off of Vietnam in the mid-70s after the Vietnam War was over. They were trying to escape from Vietnam as refugees could make it to the United States where they could make a better life for themselves. Upon retiring, this is one of the things that they present to you. This is a shadow box that shows all the different commands that I served under during the 22 years that I was in.
I had the honor of going to the 233rd Regional Training Institution, which is a 11 Bravo infantry training school where I taught school, taught our ALC, taught our advanced leaders to actually go out into the field and lead their soldiers into battle. Currently, I've been promoted and be operating as the leader over about half the state of the recruiting retention force for the Army National Guard.
One of the things I want to bring out about her that she would never bring out, 10 assignments with the Coast Guard, 6 were command positions. Her second assignment, she was second in charge of the unit. You can go through, that doesn't happen in the military. They saw something in her. I think it's extremely important that, I mean, it's empowering, not just to military, but, you know, to women, to me, because, you know, I was blessed enough to marry her. But that's incredible. That's incredible.
From my last Coast Guard assignments to be in charge of these historical treasures to the real estate industry that I'm in now, I just think from, you know, houses that kept people safe on the ocean to houses that are where people live now on land. I just think it's kind of a neat transition.
It's because the deals are fishy.
No, no, that wasn't good.
Had a soldier out in Iraq, and our units in Erbil and Taji were not able to get to this certain call, so we picked it up from the Kuwait side. 3 Marines were injured in this incident. Had mortar rounds go over the fence where they were, and one of them was hit, so we did the hero flight for him, brought him back. That way he could get home to his family, and that his family would have peace about the whole situation, and he'd get his honors that he was due. It was a tough deal, tough moment to be that guy that picks up a wounded one or one that has fallen during these situations.
Djibouti is bordered by Ethiopia and Somalia, and to the north is the Gulf of Aden and the Red Sea. Right on the other side of that body of water is Yemen. And Yemen has become quite a hotspot for terrorists here lately. But that body of water is one of the few places in the world that people can experience whale sharks. And last month I had the unique experience of being able to swim with a whale shark. About 30 feet long. It was awesome.
You know, it was a strange time when I grew up. We were at a time that every nightly newscast was showing the conflict in Vietnam. There wasn't a dinner meal that was served that we weren't looking at videos of helicopters landing in rice paddies and watching people being drug onto them that were wounded or litters being carried. It was a time of extreme trial in our nations. And I think for just a bit, much of our nation forgot who those men were and women that were in our military serving. They lost sight of the importance of what they were doing. It's like today that the office of the president deserves our respect, regardless. Every military person deserves our utmost respect, regardless.
Fortunately, I was not a Christian at that time, so I do not have any real good stories about the military. Thank God I am where I am today, because if it hadn't been for the military, I probably wouldn't be here now.
You know, I got in the military and I was not a Christian. I had not followed the Lord. I was making terrible decisions, and it wasn't who I am now today. I got in the military, John and I served. John's wife was a Christian. I know he was kind of doing this Christian thing, and I said, I like to do my own thing. It's not really for me. I got over there, and a sniper actually killed another soldier, and I was there that day. And I just told the Lord, I said, you get me out of this situation, and I promise I'll follow you. That was November 26th, 2004. I went and found this guy. His name is James Lyle. He was a Christian. He went out with us when we were doing things that weren't the best decision. And, you know, he kept saying, hey, I want to be with you guys, but I'm not going to do any of that stuff. And he never did. He was a great Christian example for us to follow. So I went and found him because that's the first person I thought, well, he follows the Lord. Let me figure out what I need to do here. And we went, and it was actually Uday Nusay's palace. We were right on the walkway that leads to the Tigris River. I said, well, what do I got to do here? I know I'm following the Lord now because I've already talked to him. And he said, get on your hands and knees and ask the Lord in your heart. And that's exactly what I did. From that day on, November 26, 2004, I have been a Christian. That is where my entire life changed. And you know, if I would have never gotten in the military, like the Lord really wanted me to do, I wouldn't be here today.
From the spiritual aspect, you know, you never know when your last moment is here. You never know when you're going to be called home. The fact that you're able to talk to these guys that are wounded as they're getting on your aircraft and tell them it's going to be okay. Do you know the Lord as we're flying there and you're praying with these guys, telling them I'll write the letter home for you. These guys, they're actually receptive at this moment in time. It'll change your life once you're involved in one of those moments. It's all inspiring, and it's absolutely amazing.
We were at a Branson show, and they always honor the veterans, and my mom and dad were there, and my wife, of course, and they asked the veterans to stand, and I was able to stand next to my dad. Dad kind of looks and smiles and nods, and you know, that's a nod that a son knows of appreciation. I'm proud of you as my son and what you did. And of course I nod back. I was proud of my dad. He was a great father.
Both members are serving, or even with one member serving. I mean, you can talk to any military spouse and they'll give you the rundown. But when both are serving, it's a whole different party. You walk that fine line of your commitment to your spouse and your commitment to your country. They both have to be equal. You have to stay committed to your country, to your service. That's non-negotiable. You have that commitment to your spouse. That's non-negotiable. That is a tough tough line to walk. We managed to dance it. I think we were extremely fortunate, in no small part thanks to God.
I was there from March until November before I was saved, and life from that perspective completely changed. As I made decisions and things, I actually had a little more fear of going out. Then when we were shot at, when things would happen, and there was a car bomb, or there were things that I would go through, jumping out of an airplane, or the fear I had to overcome is all because of the Lord. I was just so scared that I had to go to Him, and I think that was the start of our relationship.
When you're 18 years old and you join the military?
Yeah, it's not a whole lot that you know.
You don't know a lot, and you know you sign your name on the dotted line.
Yep.
To give, to serve.
When you sign that and you realize that you are responsible for serving this country, that's a commitment that no one should take lightly.
It's from the heart, and you give your all. We are the best nation on earth.
Yeah.
We are the most blessed nation on earth, and it was in service to God that we served our country.
When you're doing your job in the military, and in our case, you go out for a search and rescue, if you don't give it everything, you don't worry about sleep, you don't worry about eat, you don't worry about anything except focusing on finding those people or rescuing or whatever the case may be. That kind of commitment that you learn from the military is not something that you pick up in a college. It's not something you pick up working at a 9-to-5 job. It's something that you experience, and it does change your life.
There's a day in every single veteran's life, he sat down, he looked at a piece of paper, and he contemplated what was going to happen to his life and about him and who he was after he signed that piece of paper. He signed it. He signed over his rights to choose the easy way out. He decided to serve his country.
One of the reasons that I wanted to speak with you today came from an incident at the Little Rock Airport when Stacy and I were returning from a trip. And as we walked toward baggage claim, we noticed some activity out the right side of where we were walking down on the tarmac, and a plane had pulled up, and there was a crowd of people, and there were several vehicles. You could tell they were military, and military people were getting out in full uniform. As they rolled a ramp up to the side of the plane, a large door in the back of the plane opened, and we stood and watched. And as they went into the plane and they arrived at the door with a casket draped in an American flag, they laid that coffin on the conveyor belt, and it slowly began coming down that belt to the detail that would ultimately take it and place it in the hearse where they'd leave the airport. And as we watched them lower that casket down off the plane, there wasn't a dry eye in that airport. When it reached the bottom for just a moment, that soldier's widow, it was absolutely breathtaking and tearful to watch her lay her hands on that casket and watch other family members come up, not only to console her, but to also lay their hands on it as well. It reminded me of why we ought to be celebrating these things. It really is a great sacrifice that someone gives. Very biblical when you think greater love has no man than he who lays down his life for another. To think of the ultimate sacrifice that someone had paid, and to watch the grief and the suffering as the family awaited that hero to come home was absolutely amazing.
You learn about the flag and you say the Pledge of Allegiance when you're growing up. And my kids know it so well that every time they see a flag, they actually say the Pledge of Allegiance. The flag means a lot to an American soldier because when you're deployed, whether you're fighting or whether you're just sustaining operations, there's one distinct thing that will always, always distinguish you from the enemy or from anyone else in another country, and that's the American flag. That red, white, and blue will always be on you when you're wearing a uniform. When you look around and you have to figure out who's on your team, when you look around in a war and you're fighting the enemy, there's one thing that you can always look for, no matter what. When you're on the border of the U.S. and somewhere else, there's something that will always be there, and that's the American flag. It represents our independence. It represents our decisions that we're allowed to make. It's who we are as Americans, and it's who we are every single day when you go to work and you're allowed to go to work, it is who and what represents us.
If you've ever watched a military funeral and you watch them as they finish the funeral and they fold the flag and they meticulously fold it in every pattern that to make certain that when they finished, it represents something that is pure and honorable. And when they present it to someone, they present it from a grateful nation. Don't take time until it's too late to tell a veteran that we're grateful.
If you see a veteran that has a hat on, go up and greet him. Thank him for his service.
If you do see somebody that's been in the service, yes, please do thank them.
I want to thank you so much for what you have decided to do for your country, for your community, and for us in general. Thank you.
Be a grateful person and a grateful nation today because they deserve it. They deserve that honor. Stand up for them, defend them, and support them because we should be grateful.